So last week, I posted publicly about how I have been so enticed by LLMs. Always starting on a new project or prototyping a game or researching climate change regulations and 18th century organic chemistry and the history of screwdrivers all at the same time. The more time I spent with it, the more every problem was starting to look like an LLM-shaped problem. And that's... What are we looking at here?
Veteran YouTuber, science educator, and author Hank Green has been using AI to help make his videos. This fact alone is very worrying and will no doubt lead to many people wondering if they can trust his educational content at all. This sentiment, as well as Hank Green's admitted AI addiction, are both symptomatic of big problems with educational content on YouTube. In fact, the social media storm around this specific incident and people's reactions to it are, in a nutshell, everything wrong with educational YouTube.
Whatever reputational hit or loss of trust I have brought upon myself here, that's mine to take and try to earn back. But the people who work at Complexly, who write SciShow and Endlings and Eons and Crash Course and who work with experts and make sure that they get everything right, do the video editing, make the visuals beautiful, do that hard work of putting together some of the most valuable videos in the world, are now being called into question because of my issue.
Okay, we have it in our sight. Fire. Boom.
Good morning, Hank. It's Thursday. Probably. Leave a comment if this video was late. The clue will be that it isn't Thursday. And tell me what day it actually is. Clearly I'm confused. What year is it? Who am I?
Let's be honest with ourselves. There's not too few YouTube videos.
If you've been anywhere on the internet for the past few weeks, you will have heard that Hank Green of Vlogbrothers, SciShow, Crash Course, Dear Hank and John, Hank's channel and many other things besides, was caught using AI to help with his scripts. Hank Green was, for a long time, the science guy on YouTube, and because of this, the idea that he has potentially outsourced any part of his research, writing or editing for videos that are supposed to be informative and that people take as gospel without double checking is more worrying than it would be for certain other creators. Not that it's good when they do it either. People shouldn't take any creator's word as gospel, and I include myself in this. I get things wrong all the time. Before you repeat things that I've said as if they are facts, it would be best to look these things up yourself and double check to make sure that I explained things correctly and that I didn't mess anything up. The same goes for every other creator.
Read a book or something, I don't know.
But for someone with a reach in the millions, with a reputation on par with Bill Nye at his peak, if not more because of YouTube's international appeal, Hank Green getting things wrong, and Hank Green using his own brain less and less in the creative process, especially when giving supposedly fact-based analysis of topics like science, is very, very worrying, and could spread much further. However, this is not just a Hank Green problem. This is an educational content problem, and moreover, this is an influencer problem. The parasocial relationships people develop on this platform lead them to take the word of strangers as simultaneously friends and authority figures. To question their favourite YouTubers or streamers is sacrilege, whether they recognise it or not. This is one side of the problem. The other side of the problem is that content creation, ultimately, is a business for most of these people. They need to put out a certain number of videos per month to meet their financial and productivity goals. But science and art both do not always allow you to fit the amount of time you would need to do the topics you're covering in justice and pull them together into an informative and compelling video. Nor does every topic take the same amount of time or require the same amount of reading. Eventually, every large enough educational YouTuber has to make a choice if they want to keep up their frequency of output and their momentum. Do they reduce the amount of content they make and slow down enough to make sure they're doing everything right, that they're not constantly leaving room to cut corners? Do they hire enough people to keep the output the same, with the risk that they might not be as thorough, or good at researching or writing as you or be as dedicated, and that they almost certainly won't be as invested in maintaining due diligence and research as you for this channel, because it's not their name on the channel or their reputation at stake.
She not know they do that. Nobody know.
Do you reduce the amount of time you spend on research and fact-checking to maintain pace? Most people, in my opinion, think they are just doing the second one, but they end up doing the second and the third. Larger teams are harder to manage, and they are more likely to make mistakes, and mistakes are more likely to fall through the cracks. Unless you do 1 and 2, get a bigger team and slow down enough to make sure everything is as good as it needs to be, but making less videos means making less money. And most of these YouTubers, and Hank Green himself, are ultimately not socialists. Growth for growth's sake, endless growth indeed, is seen as a good thing. This is the same unsustainable mindset that has led to people who fetishize technology, hyping up the rollout of data centers that use so much power that they will almost certainly cook the planet before they reach their almost certainly impossible goal of creating what they call AGI. The only thing that grows endlessly is cancer, and cancer ultimately has a limit. Cancer grows until it kills the host. Capitalism is much the same.
What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire.
Science education is important, not in the least because climate change is here right now, and we need people to know what is happening, how to adapt, how we mitigate its effects, how we can roll back the devastation we've already seen and what is to come, and how to fix it and get ourselves back to a sustainable planet. Of course, this is not the only science worth teaching, far from it, but it's a relevant example. Channels that get big enough to verge on becoming content farms necessarily cut corners. This is not much of an issue if you're only talking about vlogging or talking about entertainment, but when you're educating people on actual facts, especially when you're talking about science or history, the effects of cut corners become more and more acute, and eventually they get so sharp that you too will ultimately get cut.
Hey, look at us. Look at us. Huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
Hank Green is one of the... I can't even say his fucking name. Why can't I say Hank? Hank Green. Hank Green is one of the original...
I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live! Fuck it!
Hank Green is one of the original YouTubers. In fact, as much as it depresses me to acknowledge how old his career and therefore I am, Hank Green, along with his brother John of the Fault in Our Stars fame, have been making YouTube videos as the Vlogbrothers since 2007. While John Green always presented himself in a more grounded and sometimes pretentious, in a non-derogatory way mind you, I am also, unfortunately, of that persuasion myself, as you can probably tell, Hank Green was always more of a theatre kid and a science nerd stuffed into a package of undiagnosed ADHD. That's me projecting there because I relate. I have no idea if Hank has ADHD, don't come for me about that. And while I was much more of a John Green girly when I was younger, partially because I am an aspiring novelist to no success as of yet, I personally was much more like Hank Green. I did a science PhD, he has a science background and went on to make SciShow. He made a load of novelty songs based off his special interests, and I finish these videos off with stupid songs all the time. Not because I think they're any good, but because it's fun, you know?
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. But with Tylenol, don't take it.
Nothing bad can happen, it can only good happen, but with Tylenol, don't take it. And if you can't live, if your fever is so bad, you have to take one because there's no alternative. Hank Green was one of my heroes. Both of the Green brothers were, really. Would I have started making YouTube videos if the Vlogbrothers had never existed? I don't know, but I think for so much of the early internet, especially pre-BreadTube, where YouTube was purely just crypto-fascists with no counterweight, the Green brothers really carried half of this website on their shoulders. and they tried in their own way to make the internet as a whole a better place. Hank Green is behind VidCon, he's behind SciShow and Crash Course, massive attempts to bring education to the masses, using the strengths of this platform to educate millions of people who might otherwise have a hard time accessing the materials and the tools and knowledge they would need to learn, especially outside of school settings or for those who can't make it to them. He was behind the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which legitimately brought Pride and Prejudice to a whole new generation who might not have ever thought to read Jane Austen. Then there's the Project for Awesome and the Foundation to Decrease World Suck, the extremely millennial-ass names for a huge charity drive that's been going since 2007. The Green brothers, and Hank Green specifically, have done so much good for the internet, particularly compared to their contemporaries in the space. So why am I here talking about Hank Green as an example of how educational and particularly science education content on YouTube fails?
A while back, I hosted a SciShow video about the physics of knitted fabric, and it got me in some trouble. We got a couple of factual things wrong in the video, which is never ideal, but the part that really upset people was not the mistakes, it was the tone of the video. In defense of the SciShow team, I think the intended vibe really was like, here's this everyday thing that looks super simple, but when physicists zoom in on it, it becomes astonishingly complex. But in doing that, the story that came across here was like, people who knit don't really understand what they're doing, and now the scientists are here to explain it. And yeah, that's bad, especially because that reflects a very long history of treating the work of textiles, which is like deeply skilled labor, a lot of innovation, as invisible or trivial, or just like something people do with their hands, rather than what it is, which is like a foundational technology of civilization. And this is, of course, bad just on its own merit, but it's also bad because it shuts down curiosity and openness and excitement and marvel, which is the opposite of SciShow's goals, and also the opposite of my disposition. SciShow has internal systems for responding to critique. I will link to their statement in the description, but the words came out of my mouth. I'm not proud of how they represented that history. And I also got a lot of thoughtful feedback. And look, with any time this is happening, I totally understand this is a thing with every creator I know. It's very hard to understand which parts of the feedback you want to listen to and not feel defensive all the time.
The cracks in the previously pristine image of Hank Green in the eyes of the internet really started to show with one of his biggest projects and a massive collaboration. One that started as such a pure idea, but for which the principles of bringing real education to the masses slowly gave way to making more videos faster. And what happens when frequent uploads and consistency take precedence over accuracy and thoroughness? When so many cooks are involved that the broth might spoil? You cut corners. And since this is YouTube, corners being cut in presentation, editing, or artwork would tank your videos much more than the stuff that most of us would think is actually important. And so the scientific accuracy of Hank's baby, SciShow, suffered really noticeably in some points, and not just in small ways. Some of the videos were so badly researched that it was clear that whoever wrote the scripts were not reading more than one page of their sources and spouting misinformation, sometimes dangerous misinformation, and sometimes they were just plainly wrong, in a way that made it clear that very little research into the science on show was done at all. On a channel called SciShow, whose purpose was to bring science education to people that can't access it. It's quite important that you get this right. In a slightly related story, I got in some hot water on Twitter recently, connecting this fall from grace and SciShow to Hank Green's recent case of being caught using AI in his scriptwriting process, as well as in several other instances, leading to him claiming that he has an addiction to the dopamine rush from LLM use. I thought that this quite damningly demonstrated Hank Green's lack of commitment to due diligence in research, a phenomenon that we've documented pretty well over the last few years, especially since SciShow published their wrong, awful and dangerous video about hormone replacement therapy for trans people, and that time that SciShow said that no one knows how knitting works, despite, the internet being free, and the ability to look that up and realise how wrong you were about that being at your fingertips at all times.
If you don't like cis people telling you how to live your lives, great. Neither do we. That said, we also want this video to be helpful to anyone curious about HRT, whether you're a parent to a trans youth, or maybe wondering about the changes a friend is going through, or you just want to know how—
This person doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
Now, do I think that Hank Green used AI to research or write this HRT video? Or the knitting video? Well, no, probably not. AI was a little less good at that sort of thing a couple of years ago, but besides that point, I don't think that Hank wrote that script for the HRT video, because usually he cares about things like reading about science and has the ability to read the next page in a PDF, unlike whoever did research and write that HRT script. And also he just doesn't write for SciShow that often anymore. But what releasing fully produced videos about subjects you know nothing about, full of blatant disinformation and lies so dangerous you would get your medical degree taken away for publishing them, have in common is a lack of due diligence, a lack of care when it comes to research, and an urge to primarily get videos out regularly and quickly, rather than getting videos out that actually present the facts and don't just lie to your faces. And I do think this is a more recent problem, because SciShow used to be so much better than this before the pandemic, and because this is a problem I see with so many educational YouTubers, especially the ones that have been going for years.
Germany will soon crash into the consequences of a fertility crisis made much worse by the mismanagement of the boomer generation.
Kurzgesagt is a content farm now, and almost every video they produce is rife with either misinformation or outright paid propaganda. Some of their content is bordering on climate denial. And worse, misrepresenting how the dinosaurs died.
Witnesses say that an Everest-sized asteroid hit Earth, devastated the planet, and caused a mass extinction. A simple, fascinating, and convincing explanation. Or is it?
Veritasium is now being bought out by private equity, and you can imagine how that's gone. And Sabina Hossenfelder is just a bigoted piece of shit who lies on her channel all the time to present autistic and trans people as inhuman monsters. Not very sciencey of you, Sabina.
This controversy is that at the moment there is no conclusive evidence neither for nor against the existence of rapid onset gender dysphoria, though
This person doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
And so I pointed out the pattern of behaviour that I was seeing, and linking to my video debunking SciShow's HRT video said, Hank Green admitting to using AI in research and scriptwriting does unfortunately explain why they released a video on HRT full of sometimes outright dangerous misinformation. I have seen many people on social media say the same re his knitting video, often linking a video saying exactly this, but also with a bit of misinformation in as well that we will get back to later, because I really don't want anyone coming out of here thinking that everyone criticising Hank Green and SciShow for misinformation isn't also prone to the exact same thing.
He compares AI and the process of AI becoming a thing to when weaving and spinning became a thing that was happening in factories. That is an absolutely abhorrent comparison. You cannot make that comparison, Hank. That comparison does not stand, because the machines they used to to make weaving more efficient and more fast, those machines were, one, not built off of stolen labor. They were not like stolen materials. They were just like a more efficient machine to do the thing.
This person doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
What I meant here is that this is a pattern of behaviour. The HRT video came out years ago, so AI was around and being used in the same way we see it now, but it wasn't as good at it. But it was good enough that it was already a big problem in, for example, sorting which college assignments were actually written by the human submitting them and which were written by ChatGPT. The common thread here is a lack of due diligence in research, which is one thing if you're talking about, say, a book series or a movie, in which case the end result of you making a ChatGPT-generated video about a book series or a movie is you getting called a fake fan and having your comments filled with a million Zoomers saying larp larp sahur. But in science, misinformation isn't just annoying, it can be genuinely dangerous. So, what prompted me and many other communicators to say this? To bring back the stories of SciShow and Hank Green cutting corners when it comes to research.
There's a thing in there that matters, and that's very cool. A better way to say it, and I appreciate the pushback.
A better way to say it, and I appreciate the pushback.
A word is a human invention.
Yes, and sometimes I'm doing other kinds of work inside of Claude, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I've got these 2 chapters of my book that need to be 1 chapter. Can you please help me merge them?
Last week, I posted publicly about how I have been so enticed by LLMs. Always starting on a new project or prototyping a game or researching climate change regulations and 18th century organic chemistry and the history of screwdrivers all at the same time. The more time I spent with it, the more every problem was starting to look like an LLM-shaped problem, and that's dumb.
This current media storm started when Hank Green, in a video collaboration with another influencer, completely unprompted, said the phrase,
a better way to say it, and I appreciate the pushback.
And given he was on his own there, not addressing the guest that was on the video earlier really, and that, who says that kind of thing anyway? A lot of people caught on that Hank had used AI in his script writing. Now he claims that he used it to make notes, but that he checked and that script did not have the phrase in, so he must have ad-libbed it. But either he uses ChatGPT so much that this completely contextless phrase made its way into his regular syntax, or he's minimizing the amount that he is using AI because he's embarrassed. I don't want to accuse Hank of lying, but it would be so strange to just have blurted out this ChatGPTism unprompted, rather than Hank having finished his script, asking ChatGPT to rephrase a line before he used it to record, and then forgetting to remove the prompt until afterwards. In fact, the extent to which Hank was using AI in his workflow changed in the telling, with his statements in different places claiming that he was using it for different things and to different extents. Now, whichever parts you believe or don't believe about how much AI Hank has been using, he has been using it. This is for his individual work though, not necessarily for SciShow, which has a big team and for which Hank is only a part, sometimes a small one and increasingly a small one, and which, in his Reddit post explaining himself after this whole thing went down, says that he doesn't write for anymore. But it is a show he is involved in, and we don't really know when he stepped back. It is his company, and he ultimately has a lot of sway over how things are done, to the point where he could easily fix some of these issues. SciShow is made by Hank's company Complexly, which has a public AI policy. A public AI policy for which, for purposes of transparency, I will now read an excerpt of to you in the voice of Skeletor.
For good reason, AI tools such as ChatGPT, Claude, DALL-E 2, and Midjourney have generated a lot of interest. Their ability to synthesize stories and images can be impressive, but they're also incompatible with much of what we do here at Complexly. While we don't want to ignore the role they might legitimately play in brainstorming and early research, it's important to note that using these tools to create scripts and visuals often conflicts with Complexly's values in a number of ways. 1. We will not produce videos written, edited, and fact-checked by AI. That includes not just scripts written in their entirety by these tools, but also those with significant portions composed, edited, or fact-checked by them. We will not produce videos or any public-facing content containing illustrations or animations created by AI-trained or non-consensus datasets. This includes DALL-E 2 and Midjourney. Some tools are trained on images created by people who agreed to be in the dataset, and those may be used. When using AI tools trained on consensual datasets to create visual elements, we will ensure we are not misleading viewers as to what is real or contributing to misinformation. Where applicable, we will label images created this way. We may use AI tools to suggest ideas for script subjects, examples, visual elements, etc., and do preliminary research. Ideas come from many places in the early stages, conceptualizing and producing a video, and it's fine for AI to be one of them. Similarly, using these tools to identify sources is acceptable, as long as those sources are verified by our team.
So you can see here that AI is permitted for brainstorming and conceptualizing videos, and that you can use it to find sources, but those sources must be verified by the team. The thing is, We know from previous SciShow videos that their standards for verifying sources and fact-checking, which they place great emphasis on here, have been extremely poor at times. And that's assuming that everyone at the company adhered to those rules all the time. Now, they should, but did they? Because this also implies that their fact-checking is thorough and something they're very proud of, but is it? Because
estrogen will knock levels of testosterone down some, it won't take them all the way down to where a cis woman would be. The most commonly used option is spironolactone, though providers may also recommend finasteride or dutasteride, medications also approved for things like hair loss in cisgender men.
When they talk about anti-androgens, that's bad. Like, yeah, pretty bad. So for those of you who don't know the background here, a few years ago SciShow put out a video called Actually Understand Hormone Replacement Therapy. This video was produced with the stated aim of creating a well-articulated summary of how HRT for trans people works, which medicines do what, and why they shouldn't have the stigma that the last more than a decade of trans panic has created from what is really a basic medicine that's been used for a long time for example, precocious puberty. The video aimed to do this from a pro-trans lens, using the objective science behind the medicine to break down the taboo, destigmatize, and educate. But instead, it gave clearly and factually wrong advice that was genuinely dangerous, completely misunderstanding their sources, not reading more than one page of one of the sources that they were reading from to get to the part that actually discusses that what they claim some of these substances did straight up is not how they work, and rephrasing what their sources said to change claims completely about certain medicines. It was genuinely awful and genuinely dangerous, and such a disaster that it completely shattered my and many people in the trans community's trust in the channel as a vehicle to deliver even basic science, since so much of this was basic reading comprehension being mangled so bad it could have caused irreparable harm to their audience. And the fact that most trans people knew this stuff, and if they just asked a couple of trans women to go over it and fact-checked, none of this would be a problem. They had a trans man involved, why not the other side as well? Surely, if they cannot read their own sources, if they can't get one person to double-check, if they can't review before they post, if they can't find one trans woman on the entirety of the internet to look over a channel a lot of us have loved, then how is this channel any different than the kind of videos it was made to replace? How can we use it for educational purposes when it so clearly has such low standards for research and no understanding of scientific rigor, at least in certain fields, and fields where it's more important to get it right than a lot of others? Genuinely, this was egregious, and for a topic that was so important to get right, that it's genuinely baffling that the work done on it was lazy to the point of genuine negligence. If you'd researched or written or fact-checked this script for any publication that cares about safety, never mind scientific research, you would have been fired on the spot. So naturally, I made a lengthy video on it. I'll link the whole thing in the description, but it really has to be seen to be believed, so here are some brief lowlights. When SciShow says the most commonly used anti-androgen is spironolactone, they're right, in that it's the most commonly prescribed in the US, because US healthcare is a shit show and spironolactone is cheap. In countries which prioritise patient care over cost, you're not very likely to be prescribed spironolactone because frankly, it's shit. Seriously, spironolactone has one of the lowest efficacies of any anti-androgen out there. Just take a look at this study that compared the efficacy of spironolactone against cyproterone, another commonly taken anti-androgen. Cyproterone is much more efficacious, and even then, there are more efficacious methods, such as something SciShow actually talks about at length in the video later on, because we know them as puberty blockers, GRNH analogs. There's a reason GRNH analogs are used to block puberty. They're incredibly effective compared to their alternatives. Even the scaremongering transphobes use to try and argue against their use proves that. Their complaints usually boil down to, but Lupron, which is a GRNH analog, is a cancer drug. Yes, because people who have prostate cancer have their testosterone blocked as part of their treatment. And wouldn't you know it, it's not just effective in youth, but in adults as well. Hence treatment for prostate cancer. In fact, GRNH analogs, and Lupron specifically, was the only option for anti-androgens I was offered in the UK, and it worked like a charm. In fact, when I was taking spironolactone while I was on the months-long waiting list, don't try that at home, my testosterone was not down to where it needed to be. The main reason Lupron, for example, isn't offered as your standard anti-androgen in the US is that it's expensive. And when the guiding principle of your healthcare system is not what would be best for our patient, and is instead which option will turn in the biggest profit for health insurance shareholders, you're going to be less focused on outcomes and more on incomes. But for all its faults, spironolactone is at least an anti-androgen. The other options SciShow lists don't even do that. Seriously, for anyone watching this, do not take SciShow's advice and take finasteride or dutasteride as anti-androgens. They will not block your testosterone. And the fact that the script painted them as such, with them appearing beside Spiro on this little list, suggests to me that either they just misread their sources, or they rewrote a paragraph from, say, and I'm just spitballing here, the WPATH guidelines, in a way that completely changed the meaning of what it was saying. Or so I thought. Looking through the WPATH guidelines, something they list at the top of their sources list, and tell us at the beginning of the video, is one of their major sources, it doesn't say anything at all like what they do in the video. The WPATH guidelines, correctly, point out that finasteride and dutasteride do not block testosterone, but block conversion of testosterone into DHT, a testosterone byproduct that is one of the major contributors to hair loss. Hence, if you are beginning to lose your hair, finasteride is often prescribed alongside regular old testosterone blockers and estrogen, but not instead of testosterone blockers or to block more testosterone, unless you specifically did not want to lower your T levels for whatever reason, but to help with hair loss. I was pretty curious about where such a glaring mistake came from. The only way this makes sense to me is that the script was worded in a way that it could imply DHT blockers are prescribed on occasion in addition to T blockers, but the video mistakenly presents it in a way that implies they do the same thing and are interchangeable, which isn't helped by the fact that they only list one type of T blocker, and it's the one infamous for not doing what it's supposed to. Now, the other major source they mentioned at the beginning of this video is the UCSF transgender guidelines, so just to make sure, I checked that out too. Wouldn't you know it, it also very clearly makes this distinction between these medicines and testosterone blockers. But I think I found where the error comes from. You see, the UCSF transgender guidelines, pending revision 2024, only lists spironolactone as a testosterone blocker, and in the next paragraph talks about finasteride and dutasteride. Now, what I'm pretty sure now happened here is that the scriptwriters took these guidelines from the trans femme section because they have little experience on that front, as demonstrated by this whole video, and just maybe due to a formatting error, didn't notice that the second paragraph in their sources document had a separate header and was about a whole different type of medicine. In fact, this whole feminizing HRT section takes notes from this document in a lot of weird ways. Earlier in the video, the host mentions equine-based estrogen such as Premarin, literally pregnant mare urine, that's what the name comes from, as an option for feminizing HRT.
Estrogen comes in a few forms, but doctors favor 17-beta estradiol because it's identical to the form produced in the human body. Equine-derived estrogens are also out there, but not necessarily recommended because they come with some risk of blood clot.
Now, that's odd, because no one uses that because we're not from the past. It's literally the old way of doing things, before we moved into the 21st century and could do things like synthesize hormones in the lab. So why would they mention this? It's not relevant, no one is going to encounter it, and it takes up precious real estate in a pretty short video in which they already left out a ton of actually vital information about feminizing HRT. Well, they include it, because in the UCSF guidelines for feminizing HRT, it has a whole paragraph on them as a historical aside. Conjugated equine estrogens, Premarin, have been used in the past, but are not recommended for a number of reasons, including inability to accurately measure blood levels and some suggestion of increased thrombogenicity and cardiovascular risk. Equine estrogens are obtained from the urine of pregnant catheterized horses. No evidence exists to suggest that these estrogens are superior to bioidentical human estradiol. Ethical concerns have been raised regarding the methods of production of equine estrogens. This SciShow video just throws this paragraph into the script and changes the words around, in what I would usually describe as a baffling decision, if I hadn't just talked about how they literally recommended testosterone blockers that don't block testosterone, then had the gall to frame this video as trans people finally speaking for ourselves with no cis people talking over us. In fact, it gets worse, because if you scroll down to literally the next page in the document, you will find a section talking about cyproterone, the other anti-androgen I mentioned above. The one with the higher efficacy, you know, the one that SciShow didn't mention and instead implied that you should take hair loss drugs instead. Someone here fucked up. Real bad. And the more I read into this, the more I feel like I'm losing my mind. This is a science channel. It's not too much to ask for you to read your sources. You have a whole Google Drive with your sources on for this video. I went through it to research this. How did you not double check it before you finalize this video? I've read more of your sources than you have. And, in case that wasn't enough, you know how I was just talking about GnRH analogs for testosterone blocking earlier? You know, the standard practice in many countries. It's also just on the next page. If the scriptwriters had read ahead one page, just one page, this video would be so much more accurate. But given they somehow combined 2 paragraphs about 2 whole different types of medicine into one, maybe that's simply asking too much. You know, it's nowhere near the worst thing in this video. This is, because part of their advice for non-binary people is borderline unforgivable. Because, as I teased earlier, SciShow suggests an HRT regimen that would literally give you osteoporosis. And with that, I think it's time for a drink.
The message is this. The great thing about being non-binary is that we get to decide what that means, but the flip side of that is that it's pretty hard to provide any one-size-fits-all advice. So while there aren't a lot of specific resources out there targeted at non-binary people, there are some. And a lot of what I've already said about estrogen and testosterone applies here as well. Lower doses of hormones can result in a more gender-neutral effect compared to the doses prescribed to trans men and women. And there are a few additional ways to customize treatment for whatever you personally want to accomplish. According to UCSF, people whose bodies produce mainly testosterone can use an androgen blocker without additional estrogen.
For anyone watching considering the advice SciShow gives here, that if you were assigned a male at birth, an option to consider is taking testosterone blockers without estrogen, do not do this. I repeat, do not do this. This is probably the single least responsible part of this video, even worse than the misinformation about anti-androgens, because this could genuinely cause serious harm. And wouldn't you know it, much like the other problems I talked about here, it's caused by copying and then completely misinterpreting a paragraph from the UCSF Guide to Feminizing HRT, so let's talk about it. After scouring the UCSF advice for gender non-conforming people, those being SciShow's intended audience with this section, and finding nothing, I went back to the Guide for Feminizing HRT and found the passage that they mangled. And I do mean mangled, because it just... Okay, here. Anti-androgens can be used alone to bring reduced masculinization and minimal breast development, or in those patients who wish to first explore reduced testosterone levels alone, or in those with contraindications to estrogen therapy. In the absence of estrogen replacement, some patients may have unpleasant symptoms of hot flashes and low mood for energy. Long-term full androgen blockade without hormone replacement in men who have undergone treatment for prostate cancer results in bone loss, and this effect would also be expected to occur in transgender individuals. So this paragraph is specifically talking about the potential for short-term use of anti-androgens for reduced masculinization without the effects of estrogen, but makes clear that this is not at all a long-term solution due to the long list of side effects that occur when you have no sex hormones in your system as an adult. SciShow, however, brushes these off because these side effects are mostly documented in cis men being treated for prostate cancer. But we're transgender. We're not unicorns. Our bodies don't react in a completely alien way to the rest of the human population. In the same way that cis women who do not naturally produce progesterone are a good model for trans women on feminizing HRT in terms of the efficacy of progesterone treatment, cis men who have their testosterone blocked are a good model for trans people assigned male at birth who have their testosterone blocked without taking estrogen. If we were talking about people taking estrogen, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But we're not. And dismissing these concerns is genuinely baffling. It says right here, in SciShow's source, that they quote from in this video, that doing this long term will lead to bone loss, even disregarding the other symptoms. Recommending this on a popular science channel could genuinely cause harm, beyond the harm of making people go through the wrong puberty, which the other stuff does, to a number of people. You can preach about how no one should be getting their medical information from YouTubers until the cows come home, but if you're pitching yourself as an educational channel, and especially framing this video as a video by trans people for trans people, you have a duty not to spread information that could genuinely harm people. Bare minimum. Now, SciShow's video on this was taken down a few months after I posted my video. I don't know if I had anything to do with this, probably not. This is a very small channel after all, and it was much smaller back then. But it had been up for quite a long time, and my video had about 50,000 views when SciShow announced that, having taken a second look at the video after the complaints, it didn't meet their standards for rigorous evidence and took it down. The evil is defeated, right? Well, no, because the HRT video was but a symptom. Probably the most dangerous symptom we've seen yet, to be fair, but a symptom nonetheless of a problem that has deep roots. The problem that to be really sure you're communicating science properly, you need to have the time and people and checks in place to properly research, review, and fact-check everything you're making. And when you're running a content farm, that's going to become less and less of a priority. First and foremost, you are creating a product. The product being videos, well-produced, regular, and getting enough views, or at least enough money to break even. That is frankly impossible to keep consistent without running the risk of this very problem. Some issues need much more research and care than others. You can't research an entire field of medicine in the same time that you can research how a guitar string makes noise, for example. Although, even some things that you would think are easier to grasp than endocrinology and transgender medicine, for example, still were researched in a way that might lead you to understand that it's no mistake that the people behind this could get addicted to using AI to help with their workflows, to the point of ruining their scripts and messing up vital research, potentially.
You are referring to the red null-bound socks, which, sorry to tell you, wrong technique and wrong century.
So, to address the knitting thing briefly, this is not my field of expertise at all, so I'm going to try not to talk about it too much, except to talk about this video about the controversy and what it gets wrong.
That's the other thing that's like, oh man, maybe writing on the wall. In his interview with the author of this like book about textiles and stuff, they have this conversation about AI, and like he compares AI and the process of AI becoming a thing to when weaving and spinning became a thing that was happening in factories versus it being like a thing where people were like doing this artisan thing and then like selling their woven like and their spun threads.
We're headed into a moment where maybe like a lot of the labor currently done by humans right now might in 10 or 20 or 50 years, I don't know what the numbers are, but it might be done by like software and robots. That to me kind of seems like very current and unprecedented, but this is definitely precedent. Like the industrialization of textiles is it accessible, fairly recent precedent. I don't know if you're like, you feel at all positioned to talk about that, but I feel like, I feel like you might actually be more well positioned than a lot of people who are spending a lot of time talking about it right now.
I mean, I think about it from 2 points of view. First of all, this is not completely unprecedented in the sense that this textile transition to the Industrial Revolution, basically, was a huge upheaval in a fairly short period of time.
And like the industrialization of weaving and weaving machines and such to AI and like the technology developing and like joining the technology. That is an absolutely abhorrent comparison. You cannot make that comparison, Hank. That comparison does not stand, because the machines they used to to make weaving more efficient and more fast, those machines were, one, not built off of stolen labor. They were not like stolen materials. They were just like a more efficient machine to do the thing. That is not the same. Large language models are built off the backs of works stolen from the internet, scraped from the internet, taken from people who did not consent to have their words used. I would have so much less of a problem with AI if it was only built off the backs of work that was done in-house, and if it didn't affect the environment to the degree it was, and if it wasn't as racist as it's been proven to be. But it is all of those things.
Between 1811 and 1817, Lancashire cotton weavers, Yorkshire framework knitters, and Midlands croppers began attacking mills and smashing the labour-saving machinery they blamed for their hardships. In 1811 alone, some 1,000 frames valued at over £6,000 were destroyed. They were called Luddites, after a fictional youth named Ned Ludd, who had reputedly been the first to smash the new machinery in a fit of rage.
By the 18th century, demand for English cotton was booming, driving the Industrial Revolution. The great wealth this brought the nation was built upon enslaved labour in Britain's colonies.
Adelaide Ordell's video, Hank Green is using AI but knitters aren't surprised, basically shares my view that from SciShow on Hank's previous output, you can tell that Hank sometimes, and very confidently and presented from a white guy with glasses who was known as the science guy online, sometimes outright spreads misinformation. And the ability of this man to look sciencey and confident while just not bothering to do the level of research required for a topic betrays that he and his productions, at least sometimes, do not feel as if they need to do the research required for certain topics, which leads them to getting them horribly wrong. And this confidence in being right about things you are totally ignorant on is an attitude that could well lead you to use AI in the way that Hank has been. If you think you can present a video on the science of knitting when you know nothing about it and spread loads of information about it, you're probably the kind of person who thinks you can ask ChatGPT for a couple of things and use it for a video without checking that the robot isn't hallucinating or just showing you bad information, or looking beyond the kind of things the robot might find for you, you know, like a scientist would have to do to even begin to present on a subject. This is a man I have admired in the past, I should be clear, and I think he can and should come back from this by fixing his attention to detail, especially the culture of cutting corners at SciShow, and scaling back on the output to give enough time to actually properly research and fact-check claims. I am not cancelling Hank Green. I think his heart genuinely leans in the right place. But his addiction to not just AI, but more and more work to endless growth and insane levels of output have led him to a place that I think he would be devastated to know that he was in if he showed us past from years ago what he was up to now. As someone who has been addicted to working, chasing the dopamine, I mean, I have ADHD, that's kind of the whole deal. Impulsivity, chasing dopamine hits, I get it. But also, as a science PhD, it really pisses me off. But in this video, now sitting at a frankly enormous amount of views considering what I'm about to say next, in response to Hank Green comparing the AI boom and the grassroots response to it to the Luddite movement, we see a complete whitewashing of the history of the textiles industry. Ironically, a case of a well-meaning communicator with a good take and a good point stepping out of her field of expertise and completely whiffing it, much like Hank Green does and did with his knitting video. Although given the sheer number of videos Hank works on, it's not remotely the same level of bad. But given how much this video took off in the wake of the scandal, I thought I should briefly touch on it, because no one else seems to be.
The fundamental principle of the British has been to make the whole Indian nation subservient to the interests and benefits of themselves. And so, once the British took power, they changed the entire dynamic of the Indian economy to suit their own interests. The first step, dismantling all native industry. To start, they established a legal monopoly over Indian textile goods and cut off the export market, which immediately disrupted long-standing trade links. Having now made themselves the exclusive buyers of Indian textiles, the British then changed the way that they paid for those goods. Instead of using foreign currency, they paid using the tax revenues extracted from India.
This video reacts to Hank Green drawing parallels between the AI boom and the textile industry boom with frustration. These industries are not the same at all. And as much as they are not the same, no, and at least for now, AI is not anywhere near as useful to human society as things like, you know, mass production of clothing, which was genuinely a game changer, the textile industry boom birthed the Luddite movement, and the Neo-Luddite movement is rising right now, acting against data centers. Both of these booms are instances of automation leading to mass layoffs and creating a grassroots worker-led movement against tech policy designed to throw thousands into poverty. They're actually very comparable, even down to the Luddite name. Now, the textiles industry by itself didn't cook the planet, at least not to the degree that AI has, and will if all the data centers people are promising are built, But the Industrial Revolution did begin this trend, which has culminated in the fires outside all around the world right now. And while industrialization in the textile sector genuinely made manufacturing more efficient, whereas the people being replaced by AI are currently being begged to return since the AI can't actually do their jobs, no one is saying these things are one-to-one, but we can learn from history and make comparisons to better understand our current moment. That's not an insult to anyone in the textiles industry. But the textiles industry, even Luddites aside, which they shouldn't be put aside because the Luddites are awesome, has some massive and evil skeletons in their closet. The textiles industry in this era is very much intertwined, no pun intended, with the slave trade, for working on these machines and the business of producing cloths for slave plantations, and of course for... well, where do you think you get that cotton from in the first place? The textiles boom in, for example, the UK, made white British people rich on the backs of slave labour, and the slaves obviously never saw a penny of that money and suffered horribly to make some white prick 1,000 miles away rich. There's also the epidemic of child labour in the industry. And then there's the reason Adelaide gives for them being different industries, that AI is built on plagiarism. The industrial textiles boom was also rife with plagiarism. People stole patterns and copied them en masse, or used cheap imitations all the time. And this plagiarism was much more widespread and blatant with patterns from the Empire's colonies. This is why you have to be careful even when critiquing someone for not doing their research. We shouldn't be spreading misinformation, especially misinformation that, in this case, downplays the horrors of empire and colonialism, purely by accident, mind, this was not on purpose on the video's part at all, but it's the same problem as Hank's. What's that? Hank Green had a scandal about AI use? Time to make a video. I know enough about this topic to speak on it without fact-checking, don't I? Well, no, you don't. This is the problem. Content as a product, I need to produce without being thorough, without care for misinformation. And this is the same instinct that led Hank Green to a place where his AI use was so hard to ignore that he made this statement. The thing that everything we do is based on is that you know what I'm saying and my thoughts coming from my brain in the way I decide. I've made that harder and I'm sorry. I've been relying too heavily on AI as a research aid. It can be very useful for this task, giving me access to a lot of papers I didn't know existed really fast, but I think that has been to the detriment of my work, because it has not given me the freedom to find all of my own ways into and around a topic. But for clarity, the origin of claims in my video are not ChatGPT said this. I've been using AI to locate papers and other resources for learning about topics. You are still getting my takes based on what I read, know and learn. I think what people have said in this thread about me diluting myself is spot on. Ultimately, what I am most scared of is ruining myself for people, but I've not been managing my impulse as well. You need to know that my words are mine. I didn't believe this hasn't been true, but I've been moving so fast that my own process isn't actually clear to me, and I want to have it be a guarantee moving forward. What I can't guarantee, though, is that we will agree about this technology, or what to do with it. We need a lot of kinds of folk critiquing this technology. I'm not a pure AI hater, which people in the AI industry know, so when I say the way these models were trained deeply disturbs me, that lands differently. When I say that I think that the speed at which these companies are trying to consolidate economic power should freak out everyone in the world, that's coming from someone who has nuanced takes. When I say I worry about the climate impact of this rollout, this is not me saying, I don't think this tech should ever exist. It's me saying, for God's sake, don't make your biggest problem worse. It is very likely you, the reader, and I disagree on how or even whether AI should be used. I think it makes sense for that disagreement to exist, but I have also believed that my audience is more likely to be right than I am. You know what this feels like in a way that I can't, and I'm so sorry for diluting myself in this way and harming the thing that we have all built together. As for the, why don't you just make less? No one is making you do this. I'm not sure that's how I work. I've been feeling the pressure of, oh, I have this little video idea I need to get out real fast so I can get to the more important stuff. And I create when I feel that pressure, but making more things does not make me do better things. It does not make the big thing that we've been doing for 20 years better. I know that I can manage myself more effectively. I want to make videos like the one I made yesterday on Hank's channel, where the writing was the whole thing and I felt it all the way down and have been so enriched by people's responses to it. And sure, I'm probably going to make dumb, unscripted, straight-to-camera thoughts videos sometimes, and then I'll play connections, but mostly, I need to come to terms with the fact that the level of dopamine I've been getting from interacting with LLMs, with doing more and more and more and more, is not healthy for me or good for the world, it is careless and has disconnected me from where people are on this. I was talking about this with Catherine last night, and she did not pull any punches. Frankly, neither did John. Neither of them think I've been being healthy. I need to readjust. So, what changes? 1. Expect less Hank's channel. It may need to be on pause for a while. It may be that Hank's channel comes back with writing and research support, and maybe that it comes back with just way fewer videos. I'm going to spend this time finishing a video I've been working on for ages that I think really matters. So, Hank admits that he has a problem. That's good. He recognises that things went wrong, that he is making his content worse, and as he will say, he has been looking at every problem as something for AI to solve. When all you have is ChatGPT, every problem looks like a... What's the chatbot equivalent of a nail? Seriously, I've never used ChatGPT, I don't know what happens there. I had a friend once use it to make a Habbo Hotel-ass picture of what their life looks like, so... every problem looks like an excuse to do something really weird and creepy, I guess?
I got this thing for like $20,000.
Oh, no!
What?
Nope. What? The shrimp Jesus.
I do think reducing the amount he is making videos is a good idea too, and him pointing out that he has been relying too much on AI for research, recognising that his use of AI is impulsive and revolves around the dopamine he gets from it and not its actual usefulness, is also good. Self-aware even. But then, after I made the first draft of this video, Hank released a Vlogbrothers video addressing this stuff. After a week or so of reflection, and he's gone back on some of this. He insists he's not making too many videos necessarily, he just thinks he can make more than he can, which is along the same lines, but it's a worrying backpedal. But what's actually worrying is that he's not going to be cutting AI, but making an AI policy for himself, much like the one they use at, for instance, SciShow.
And of course, I'm really closely associated with Crash Course and SciShow, but there are whole teams of people who have each other's backs, who are just trying their damnedest to make great things that help people understand the world. I get that not everybody's going to get this, and I understand that what I do, no matter what context I do it in, is going to reflect on Complexly. And so I should be more careful, and I should not be on Twitter. Everybody agrees I should not be on Twitter. Second thing, following Complexly's lead, an AI policy. This all started because I said I needed to realign the way I use LLMs. I have thought a lot about that this week. I'd become too reliant on them for advice, for editing, and for sourcing, so I'm creating an AI policy for myself. One of the things I've been hearing in the discussion around this, and I'm glad this discussion is being had, is that this is a good idea. I encourage creators to do this. It doesn't even have to be public. Just have it. I wish I had had it.
Now, would this be better than just using it for everything? I guess. But making your own restrictions on something you've admitted you have a problem with, to the point of calling it an addiction, is ill-advised. At the very least, someone else should be making this for you and monitoring you, holding you to account. If I were an alcoholic, and I wrote my guide to drinking less myself, I don't think that guide would realistically lead me to drink less. But the other thing is, this is him deciding what they have in the AI policy at Complexly is working. But it's not working. A policy saying that AI can't be used for front-facing things, that you can't use it for visualizing in scripts, but you can use it for research. This is exactly the problem. This is exactly why when people are critiquing Hank for this, they go back to SciShow, including myself, because the problem here is a lack of care when it comes to research first and foremost. And getting that wrong, as wrong as they have been in the past, in a mass appeal science channel is egregious. And it'll be the same here. It is not working. Even if the mistakes therein had nothing to do with AI, which could be true, the policies at SciShow, no matter how much you lionize them as a good example of how to handle AI, are very demonstrably bad for producing high-quality, well-researched videos on every subject. Ultimately, you can't produce videos on every subject without fucking up, because no one knows everything, and this is a problem a lot of educational content on YouTube fails to understand.
This person doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Hank in this video is clearly upset that people are coming after SciShow and Crash Course and other Complexly shows in the wake of his mistake, which is fair to a degree because he's not the one making these mistakes, at least not anymore, but that's not the point that people are actually making. The point that we're making is that there is a common thread here of projects in which Green has had a real say, of producing poorly researched, not fact-checked, and sometimes dangerous content that spreads misinformation to millions of people. Maybe those problems are resolved now. I personally haven't been able to watch SciShow since the HRT video, because I simply do not trust them to actually understand their sources enough to explain science to me anymore, because they've demonstrated that they are willing to publish horrendous misinformation. So maybe it's got better. And I'm not saying that Hank is writing each SciShow video. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's not writing most of them. I'm saying this is a problem across these channels and across educational YouTube himself, and a problem that Hank needs to wrestle with as well as everyone else.
You're my boy. You're my #1 boy.
In fact, if you don't understand this, there's something you need to understand about video essays in general. When we talk about one simple controversy, we're not just talking about that one thing. We're talking about a bigger subject. He's just the catalyst. Education as industry is dangerous because it leads to content farms, because it leads to cut corners, because getting the science right and giving adequate education, hell, because making sure their content doesn't actively put people in danger, matters less than maintaining and then increasing production for growing as a channel and as a business. The SciShow HRT video is an extreme example, but it's a real example, as is Veritasium being bought up by private equity and hollowed out, pushing out the people behind it that actually care about making things right. This is what it looks like to put money before education, and this is why schools are run in places that aren't rotting Thatcherite hubs of neoliberal wank by governments and councils, and not by Coca-Cola or Halliburton or Google. I think Hank Green is suffering from, frankly, being old enough to still buy into the techno-optimist, bordering on tech fetishist, promises of the early internet. New technology is inherently good, and the problems are just in how you use it and when. I don't think this is conscious on his part. I think, and because of his statement, I know that he thinks that he is skeptical of AI and how it should be used. But he is also the same person who claims to care, and I believe cares, about science and science communication, but keeps producing companies and channels that demonstrate very little care for scientific integrity. At a certain point, you have to step back and ask yourself whether your fundamental values are truly aligned with your actions, and whether your fundamental values have, without you being aware of it, changed, or if they have to change. I believe, Hank Green, that you have a good heart. I just wish you could slow down enough to realize that you and your companies are stretched too thin, and that those of us who are critiquing you or your companies have good hearts too. We are not out to attack you or Complexly or any of the people there. We want to stop the spread of misinformation. And as much as you might believe that you are detached entirely from some of these products, you could stop the mistakes I've discussed in this video, and we can't. It does ultimately start with you, at least to an extent. And I do hope, given the amount of reflection you've done in the wake of this, no matter how much I think some of the conclusions you've come to are worrying, that you can understand that and course correct, as you have done in the past. So, to you, Hank, I know that you're struggling right now. Unfortunately, it's kind of earned, but I think this can and will get better. I believe that you can overcome this. And to you, and to all of you that are watching, don't forget to be awesome. It feels so weird to do.
This person doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. But with Tylenol, don't take it.
Nothing bad can happen, it can only good happen, but with Tylenol, don't take it. And if you can't live, if your fever is so bad, you have to take one because there's no alternative. Sadly, first question, what can it take instead? It's actually, there's not an alternative to that. I mean, they've been proven bad. So bad, nothing that can happen, it can only good happen. No, with Tylenol, don't take it. And if you can't live, if your fever is so bad, you have to take one because there's no alternative. Don't take it. Hey, thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. Please give it a hype. please give it a like, leave lots of comments, say things that I didn't say. Oh my god, I can't believe that you said that Hank swam in volcanoes, stuff like that. It'll be fun. And then people coming at the start will be like, what the fuck did this weird transsexual say about Hank Green? I think that'd be fun. Fun prank we can pull on the internet. We should do it. Subscribe. Tell all your friends about it. Smash that hype button, smash that subscribe button, and smash that like button. And please, if you can, I am still doing my Patreon / YouTube membership drive. Not YouTube. That's not good at all. No pubes involved in this. YouTube membership and Patreon drive. I would love if as many of you join my Patreon as possible. Even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just the minimum, please, please, please help me out. I'm trying to get my life back on track and get myself my own place, my own life again after having been away. Been back in Britain for more than like about 9 months now. We're trying to rescue ourselves. We're trying to do new things. We're trying to do good things. Trying to become psychologically stable again, which has mostly been a thing. I've had a lot of sicknesses and stuff, as you will know if I've read the last two. If you've seen the last three, now it's fine. It's not fine. I'm trying, but you can help me out. Please help me out. We'll get through this. It's not Wrath Month anymore. I don't know what month comes after Wrath Month. Greed Month. That sounds bad if I'm saying this, so I'm not going to call it Greed Month. Month. Please help with Coffee or PayPal, links below. One-time donations on there. That always really helps, and I really, really, really appreciate it. But also, you can give me monthly money, even if it's just a little bit, on Patreon or YouTube memberships, and that is also very, very cool, and I love it, and I will love you forever if you do that. I think you can gift them now. Can you gift memberships now? You definitely can with the live streams. Can you do it now? If you can also do that. I don't know how that's going to work, but you can do that. And every Patreon or YouTube member will get access to early videos, uncensored videos, access to the members only Discord, which is now going to have the utter benefit if you're in the members only Discord, which you can only get to by being a member or a patron, or a personal friend of mine, I guess, of asking me questions or suggesting topics for live streams. There's a streaming tab in the Discord now. You can suggest things for me to talk about or do or watch on the live streams. And if you send it to me, I'm obligated to do it as long as it does not break the terms and conditions on the website I will be doing it on, whether that be YouTube or Twitch. And if you send me something that's very copyrighty, I might have to go onto Twitch for a bit. Well, I've not tried either yet because I've been sick, so you don't have to worry about that. Oh yeah, and you get my Nintendo Twitch friend code and exclusive content such as when I had guests on here, I have full videos of that from them, talking to them on there, and you can find those. And then you will also, of course, get your name read out at the end of each video, just like these lovely people who are the best people, and you could join them. You could be also one of the best people if you joined. Montana Schmidtbauer, Zach Beavan, Meow Meowski, Eva Kebab, Marty Hunt, Jane Luciferian, Melissa Allen, Sarah Francesca Smith, Candice Murray, Mason Pugh, Linecut Moon, 90s Doofus, Nathaniel, Nathaniel C. I was trying to work out how to say this then. Nathaniel? Nathaniel. I'm going to say Nathaniel. I've read your name like 5 times now. I'm so sorry. Nathaniel C. Cassandra Thompson, Chloe, Meat Moop, Juice Man, Lawrence M, Mongolian Shaman, Spurious Machinery, Tor Nielsen, Scuzzbopper, T. Rook, Serena D, Karina Kiriakow, David Cropper, Harlow, Dini Muerta, AudiHD, Dan Shape Blob, Achu, Graffiti _ Heather Nelson, Uncast Shadow of a Southern Myth, Rain Stuff, Will, Alexander Barnes, Reesnet, Ken Sorden, Hello Kirsty, yes you Kirsty, I'm talking to you, Georgie, Carlito Del Mozzote, Anna Nicholson, Dungeon Slime, Naomi Gorman, Melody, Heidi Law, Transform and Function, Cara Patching, Mattia 98, Lilith Dawn, Spinoir, Victor Lufgren, Kill the Gilded Dragon, Slice of Cake, Rue, Maltium, Gina Service, You Are Made of Stupid, Tomo, Melissa Jackson, Ren approves of your stuff, Minstrel of course, Jeffreyon, Tom the Not Quite So Brave as Sir Lancelot, LFR, Trecoy, Ariella, Proqua, Robin Rocks, Emily Eisenberg, Garlic Escape, Kira B, No Sparkling Heart, Corey, Gianna J, Imogen Q, Luciana Friz Andrade, Adam, Harry, Quesadilla de Tortilla Azul, Leron, Adam Lees, Daniel Nevels, No Not That, Paul MB, Wandering Wonder, Ashling Murphy, Lex Phoenix, Enter the Kuzitz, Mira D, Jade Senior, Boa Ia, James W, Deborah Laboon, Zillas Athenium, Vince Whitaker, Amelia Lissette, Jay, Frank McManus, Susan Foster, Helena Real, Syria or Whiskey, Alicat Girl, Sarah, Lloyd Luciente, Jason Cribbett, Raven of the Tempest, Shield Data, Robin Podolsky, Nightlight Pushy Jesus, Mantray, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Soma Piglet, Brain Douche, Artie Wolf, Deanna McMillan, Carolyn Regalado, Alexander Lilly, and Howard Lott. Thank you all so much. You mean so much to me. It's you that means I can do this and that I am anyway not destitute. Join them and help me become less not destitute. That was a double negative. I don't even know what sentiment I was saying at the end of there, but thank you for watching, and I love you. Don't take it.